I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who supported the channel all throughout the year, and this video is a compilation of all the different drill videos on the channel you might have missed. Hope you enjoy it and have a blessed year. The 23-year-old gang member would find himself bleeding out on the floor of his parents' restaurant as his attackers raid the venue and stab him straight in the back. This story takes place in Elephant and Castle, an area of South London in the borough of Southwark. South London is typically known for having a large number of gangs across the borough, and this battle with tit-for-tat gang violence seen many innocent people losing their lives. The main person of this video would be involved in gang activity and would eventually become a victim to the streets. The person I'm referring to is 23-year-old Ian Gualavisi. Ian was described as a hard-working man who worked in his family's Ecuadorian restaurant, Rincon Costeño, located in Elephant and Castle. The future seemed bright for Ian, but on the other side of the coin, Ian also had a dark past. He was heavily involved in the gang life and will get the name Migo from the Kuku Gang.
I was in Johan, blowing a stereo bang, I thought I DJ spin it. See, bro got his poker tucked and so do I, we're twinning.
You see, the Kuku Gang is based in Kennington, an area in South London located in the borough of Lambeth. The two main gangs in Kennington are Kuku, who are located on Black Prince Road, and a gang I've made multiple videos on called Harlem Spartans. Kuku was formerly known as Kennington Black Mob, followed by the younger offshoot set BYM, which stands for Back Your Mash. This basically means pull out your gun. The Kennington Black Mob will have beef with surrounding groups, Gas Gang and OC, and the tit-for-tat violence will lead to 15-year-old Alex Commando being stabbed in the heart as he got off a bus with his friends. By the mid-2010s, the gang will change its name to Kuku, after being influenced by the term Kuku Gang from Chicago in the United States, with Kuku basically meaning crazy. This will be the same time that Ian Gualavisi will become a prominent member and will start releasing music under the name of Migo Kuku. With the type of music Ian was producing, he will start to gain a lot of traction from the UK drill scene, and when your name starts to ring bells in that scene, it's only a matter of time before rival members come to attack. The problem Ian was facing was that whilst he was known in the scene, he was also working at his family's restaurant, which made him a massive target. On the 18th of December 2018, Ian will be attacked for the first time just outside the family restaurant, and police will be called. The fight, which was allegedly gang related, was serious enough that it triggered a review of the premises license, and at that time the licensing subcommittee decided that Ian Gualavisi, who was the son of the license holder, should be permanently banned from the venue along with another man, Ronaldo Palacios. The Gualavisi family, despite the warning, will continue running the business like normal, with Ian still being a part of the restaurant. However, with the news that Ian, aka Migo, was still working at the restaurant, his rivals and people he had a problem with will continue to attack, as they knew exactly where to find him. On Saturday the 10th of July 2021, around 6-7 people were inside the shop drinking around the bar. One of the cameras shows Ian sitting and drinking from a beer bottle. Around 2:40 AM, a man then walks behind him, grabs a glass bottle and smashes it over Ian's head. This is when the fight now breaks out, and the attacker pulls out a machete and allegedly stabbed Ian. After being attacked, Ian somehow made his way out of the restaurant, where paramedics found him and rushed him to a hospital. Despite the seriousness of what happened, Police later discovered that no one inside the premises had called 999, and the scene had been cleaned up and locked before officers arrived. The Southwark Council later stated that this looked like a deliberate attempt to conceal the fact that a violent crime had taken place on the licensed premises. The restaurant, after the first attack, didn't want to attract any attention from the council in fear that they may lose their restaurant, so they decided to act like nothing happened and locked up the place. Ian refused to talk to the police about the incident, which is when they went down to the restaurant and got access into the property from a key holder. Inside they found blood scattered everywhere, tables and chairs turned over, along with smashed glass on the floor. Council records shows that after this fight, the police alleged that by allowing Ian back inside the venue, even though he was previously banned from being part of the restaurant, the owners had breached their licensing conditions. It's not actually stated what final action was taken as a result of this breach, but the memo recommended that all staff receive conflict management training within 28 days, all staff be retrained in CCTV operation, and the management team to improve how they communicate with emergency services during serious incidents. This was another wake-up call for Ian, but with the family pressure to keep the business running, he would ignore the warning signs and his luck would eventually run out. On the 14th of December 2021, two men would arrive outside the Rincon Costeño restaurant owned by Ian's parents. Ian was working at the restaurant on this day and was getting ready to close, but just outside the venue was two men, one in a high-vis jacket and the other in dark clothing, both with crash helmets trying to conceal their identity. CCTV will capture the two men talking and debating on what I think was whether they should enter the restaurant at that moment and if Ian was inside. The attacker in all black will nod his head, which is when the other attacker with the high-vis pulls out a knife and runs straight into the restaurant. In the next set of footage, you can see Ian spot the attackers and runs off to the back of the restaurant, whilst the attacker with the knife chases after him. The attacker goes on to stab him once in the back before running back out with the other attacker. This whole situation took place in a matter of seconds, and Ian was stabbed in front of his parents whilst they called the police as the son bled out on the floor inside the family restaurant. The two attackers will hop back on the moped and sped down the road through Burgess Park, where they eventually ditched the moped on the Elmington estate and set fire to it. Emergency services would eventually arrive at the Rincon restaurant, but was already too late, and Ian Gualavisi, aka Migo from Kuku, was pronounced dead from just a single stab wound. A massive investigation will now be launched for the murder of 23-year-old Ian Gualavisi. The first task was to reconstruct exactly how the attack unfolded. Investigators recovered multiple CCTV feeds from the restaurant itself, nearby shops, and CCTV to track mopeds moving through the Elephant and Castle junction. Detectives quickly identified the attacker's stolen moped, seen entering Hampton Street from Walworth Road at 7:43 PM and leaving only 2 minutes later. The only issue is that the moped the police had their eyes on was already set on fire and had no real evidence that could help with identifying the two attackers. With the lack of real evidence, police also issued appeals for dashcam and doorbell footage from anyone near Walworth Road, Hampton Street and Camberwell between 7:30 and 8:15 PM. Detectives publicly said that they were confident that the moped was in the area for some time before the attack, hinting at the fact that this was a planned attack. Despite more than 50 witness statements and hundreds of CCTV clips, no one came forward with names of the attackers. So 3 months later, in March 2022, the investigation was featured on BBC Crime Watch Live, where the CCTV footage was shared to the public for the first time. With this new footage out to the public, we'll bring in some new leads and see many teenagers arrested and brought in for questioning in relation to Ian's death. Two men, both aged 24, were arrested on suspicion of murder and later released under investigation. Additional arrests will be made in 2022. 4 males aged between 16 and 21 were arrested but released pending further inquiries. The investigation produced a number of arrests but no straightforward convictions. and to this day the murder of Ian Gualavisi remains unsolved. There's a lot of speculations in the scene, with people saying that this attack wasn't gang related and was actually because of a personal problem that Ian had with someone else. The fact Ian was still working at the restaurant whilst knowing that people were after him is just crazy to hear. Ian was working to take control and start running the family business, but his tie to the gang life was just setting him back, and the fact that a lot of his rivals knew where he was working didn't make things any easier. He was lucky to be alive after the 2 prior incidents, but all it took was one stab wound to the back to end everything. If we look back at the footage, it's not actually known what was said between the 2 attackers before they ran into the restaurant, but with the different gestures and movements, it's almost as if they were debating whether they should do it or not, but the guy in the high-vis just pulls out the knife and goes through with it. His family was present when the whole thing was happening, and they had to see their son literally die in front of their eyes. This is the sad reality of gang violence, and it's crazy how these clowns have no regard for human life. The family of Ian would now have to live with the memory of their son's death for the rest of their life. Like I said before, this case is still unsolved, and the 2 attackers have never been caught to this day. But if you take one thing from this video, it'd be that their gang life is stupid, and it's not something you want to be involved in. Go put your energy into something that will actually benefit you in life, and I'll see you lot in the next one. God bless. 51-year-old Elvis Grant, an old school gang member whose love for the street life led him to a joint enterprise murder as he went on a ride out with both his sons to stab another gang member. This story takes place in northwest London at St Raphael's in Neasden. The murder of Devon Jensen Wallace by Elvis Grant and his 2 sons was linked to a gang dispute from members of SRS, which is short for St Raphael's. The gang was first established in the early 90s when a few members from the Stonebridge estate moved in during the crack cocaine era. This era would see many gangs emerge from the northwest area and would lead to many tit-for-tat violence for control of the drug trade. Elvis Grant was a prominent figure of the St Raphael's gang in the late 90s and would be involved in a lot of the shootings and stabbings that were going on around Brent at that time. He would now get the name Sneaky. The SRS gang members around the late 90s to early 2000s were dangerous individuals and had no problems threatening their own members. This would come after a well-known younger SRS member known as Danger was involved in an armed robbery that went wrong. Him and his affiliates travelled back to the state and were arrested on the same day by Operation Trident. They found 2 loaded firearms under his mattress at his mum's house. The guns didn't belong to him and he refused to inform the police to who owned the guns. The 14-year-old was then sentenced to 18 months in jail because of his age. The older SRS members would catch wind of what happened and ended up threatening the 14-year-old's mother that very same day. They insisted that they would kill the whole family, along with making plans of kidnapping the mum until the case was finished. This was to ensure that the kid kept his mouth quiet about who owned the guns. The mother was later put into the witness protection program and removed from the state for her own safety. Elvis, being part of the gang from the start, would see himself rack up convictions from drug charges to possession of an offensive weapon, and at just the age of 20 he had his first son, Jamal Grant, but was still very much involved in the street life and would have another child, Lamar Grant, 5 years later, which is when he took a small step from the streets as a newer generation of St Raphael members started making noise. Both of Elvis' kids, Jamal and Lamar, grew up in the system and were a product of their environment. With the dad still having a foot in the gang life, they would now follow the same path and were already causing trouble at a young age. The older sibling Jamal would join the St Raphael's gang, taking after his dad's name, Sneaky. The younger brother will also follow suit and was known as Younger Sneaky. The new generation of St Raphael's members will have heavy beef with the Stonebridge gang, known as TOS, Thugs of Stonebridge. The tit-for-tat violence was at an all-time high, with an SRS member called Jim Jones being stabbed to death after driving home from Wembley. The 3 individuals stabbed and dragged him out of the car, then proceeded to drive off in the same car he was driving in. Then there was another case of SOS members doing a drive-by shooting all over the Stonebridge estate with a Mac 10 submachine gun, and the same members going to a house party days before and shooting at Stonebridge members, almost killing an innocent civilian. One of the saddest stories stemming from this gang war between St. Raphael's and Stonebridge is the mistaken identity killing of Kwasi Mensah. In 2019, Stonebridge members were looking to kill the leader of the St. Raphael's gang, who at the time was Pac-Man, also known as Baki. The gang saw an innocent man called Kwasi walking out of the Costco shop. The gang followed him inside a park, which is when Stonebridge member called Beefy shot him in the head at point blank range as Kwasi was eating his sandwich on the bench. This was a case of mistaken identity, as Kwasi looked similar to Pac-Man, who was the intended target. The reason why this case is just sad is because Kwasi was just an innocent guy who worked 3 jobs to make ends meet. He had no gang affiliation whatsoever and had just clocked out of his shift at Sainsbury's and was going to grab something to eat. I've covered this case before, but again I just want to say rest in peace Kwasi Mensah, and our thoughts and prayers go out to his family and friends. With the whole tit for tat violence going on, Jamal and Lamar will be involved in gang activity and become known to the police just like their father, who then set the right example for his kids. What the Grant family go on to do next will be a prime example of why being involved in the gang life never ends well. On the days leading up to the incident, Devon Wallace, who was a gang member known as Liquor Stretch, got into an altercation with Jamal Grant, which led to Jamal, aka Sneaky, being stabbed in the process. Although the stabbing wasn't fatal, the retaliation was soon to come. Jamal told his dad and brother about the situation, which is when they started planning on how they were going to get their revenge. Months later, on the 1st of June 2022, Devon will be walking with friends on the St. Raphael's estate around 6 PM. As the group passed near Overton Close, Elvis and his 2 sons, Jamal and Lamar, will jump out from behind some bins with a machete and a baseball bat. The group of teenagers start running in the opposite direction as the Grant family chase them. According to CCTV footage and witnesses, the gang was screaming how they're going to kill Devon while chasing him. The group eventually caught up to Devon, which is when Jamal stabbed him in the leg in the major femoral artery and causing severe bleeding. The dad, Elvis Grant, stood there with a baseball bat as his son stabbed Devon in the leg. The 3 members now made a run for it and left Devon lying in a pool of his own blood. Police and ambulance were called to the scene but was already too late, as Devon died at the scene less than an hour later from severe blood loss. The police will now launch an investigation into the murder of Devon Wallace and were assuming this was linked to the heavy tit-for-tat violence going on in the area. You see, the Grants were a very well-known and feared family in the area, mostly because of their dad Elvis, who, like I said before, was heavily involved in gang violence for decades and built up a name on the streets. The police were met with complete silence, as no one said a word about how the Grant family might be involved. Met Detective Chief Inspector Joe Garrity said, "These defendants are suspected of being linked to a gang associated with serious violence. My team were faced with a wall of silence. Even Devon's friends would not speak to officers. However, seeing the fear these people created only made us more determined to bring them to justice." With the lack of information from the locals, detectives will now rely on forensics, CCTV, phone work and reconstructions. The investigation will quickly focus on the Grant household, because police believe that Jamal had a grudge against Devon for the stabbing that happened a couple months back. With this suspicion, a warrant was executed at the Grant's address. During the search, a baseball bat was found in the kitchen, and the forensic team were able to recover fingerprints from Lamar and blood from Devon on the bat. Detectives also used CCTV and phone analysis to link all 3 of the Grants to the crime. It was also said that the family had disposed of the blade used to kill Devon hours after the attack. All 3 of the Grants will be arrested and will face trial at the Old Bailey. At trial, the prosecution's case was joint enterprise. a coordinated chase and attack in which Elvis and Jamal were the main actors with a machete, and Lamar was involved with a baseball bat and a group chase. Only a single stab wound actually killed Devon, but the law doesn't require multiple blows for murder where intent to cause serious harm can be inferred from the conduct. This being the fact that the gang chased him with a large machete and shouted out that they were going to get him. In relation to 31-year-old Jamal Grant, the court heard of the prior stabbing and it's believed that Devon was responsible. During the trial, Jamal admitted presence but claimed self-defense. The jury rejected this and he was found guilty of murder and perverting the course of justice. Jamal was given a life sentence with a minimum term of 24 years, plus 2 years concurrent for perverting the course of justice. In relation to the father, 51-year-old Elvis Grant, he was also found guilty of murder and perverting the course of justice. His presence and actions during the chase were proven by the prosecution. Elvis was armed with a baseball bat while Jamal stabbed Devon. Elvis was given a life sentence with a minimum term of 24 years, plus 2 years concurrent for perverting the course of justice. In relation to the younger son, 26-year-old Lamar Grant, he was acquitted of murder but convicted of manslaughter, plus perverting the course of justice. The court found he was part of the group attack and chase, and later took part in disposing of the weapon and clothes, which gave him more of an involvement in the murder of Devon. Lamar was given 15 years for manslaughter, plus perverting the course of justice. Elvis Grant's love for the gang life led to him serving a life sentence, with both his sons also being behind bars for something completely avoidable. Elvis, being an original member of the St. Raphael's gang, led to him passing on the torch onto his own kids, rather than discouraging this sort of lifestyle. In May 2024, Jamal and Elvis tried to appeal the decision by saying that the judge was too harsh and was putting too much weight on things like group offending, planning, and risks to others, rather than the crime that happened. Jamal said that there was only one stab wound and no intent to kill. However, the Court of Appeal rejected these arguments, upholding all the sentences, and in the case of Lamar, the court upheld the judge's view that his involvement in the murder was not minor because he was physically there and helped dispose of the clothing. It's very weird to see a father encouraging this sort of behaviour, having been involved in a gang life themselves. The fact that he decided it was a good idea to go out and attack Devon with his own son is just wild to me. The Grant family are now sitting in prison as the St. Raphael's gang continues to move without them. Like I say in every outro, if you take anything from this video, let it be that the gang life is truly not something you want to be involved in. You got family and friends that fully care for you, so stay smart and let me know in the comments if I missed anything. I'll see you lot in the next one. God bless. Keelan Wilson, also known as Ksav, the 15-year-old boy who decided to switch gangs and was stabbed to death 43 times by members of his previous gang, whilst his final moments were caught on CCTV.
Gang investigation now obviously been going on for some time, since May 2018. It's been a difficult, long, complex investigation.
He's just 15 years old. He's still a baby. And nobody deserves anything like this.
This story takes place in Wolverhampton, a city located in the West Midlands of England. The two Wolverhampton gangs that are relevant to this case are BG, aka V2, and Triz, aka V3, whose gang beef is full of tit-for-tat violence. BG, also known as V2, is a gang based around the WV2 postcode in Wolverhampton. It's believed that BG stands for Black Gang, with their most well-known member being Lzz, who picked up traction in the music scene because of how disrespectful and violent his music was.
If I bore my man in his head, they'll probably bleed out his brain and collapse.
V2 will beef another Wolverhampton gang called Triz, also known as V3. And this gang beef is crazy because they're pretty much minutes away from each other, only being separated by a single street. The V3 gang is based in the WV3 postcode in the Meridor estate. The earliest reporting of the violence between the two gangs goes back to January 2018, when V2 members went on a ride out in the V3 estate that ended with a 14-year-old Triz member getting stabbed in the stomach, and a 15-year-old boy being taken to hospital after being stabbed in the hand and leg. Ksav and a friend he's known since primary school, called Rico, would be members of the V3 gang from the young age of 13. Ksav would appear in multiple V3 music videos where he disrespects his rivals, with the most popular one being under the name of Postcode Kings.
I don't understand these, man. True. I'll start stubbing up, man. You'll start lying for the fans. Pull up on 2 or C. Beg up, please don't dash. Work rate's mad done, bro. They only have work rate with their tracks.
However, what Ksav could have never predicted is that in the space of a year, 2 of the people in that same music video with him would be the ones stabbing him multiple times until he died. For unknown reasons, Ksav, part of V3, would switch gangs and now become a member of their biggest rival, V2. This would throw a spanner into the friendship of Ksav and Rico, as they now went from childhood friends into sworn enemies, all because of a postcode they don't even own. This is the sad reality of being involved in a gang life at such a young age. Ksav would now start dissing his old gang and the people he was affiliated with, burning the bridge between him and his old gang. It was said that he would become really close to the BGV2 gang member previously mentioned called Lzz, but with the switch up, he now had to watch his back for his old friends who were now after him. Just a couple months after the switch up, Ksav and his dad were driving through the V3 gang area where they spotted Ksav's childhood friend, Rico. It said that an altercation broke out, with Ksav's dad having to disarm Rico, who was telling Ksav to come around the corner whilst holding an axe in his hand. Ksav was able to get out of the situation unharmed, but this was just the start of the craziness that was going to go down over the next couple months. On May 29, 2018, a brawl between V3 and V2 members will break out in the Wolverhampton city centre, and in a recording by a bystander, you can see multiple teens with machetes chasing and trying to slash each other in broad daylight, with pedestrians and children around. Ksav, who wasn't at the scene at the time, caught wind of what happened and asked his mum to drop him off around the V2 area so he could check up on his friends. In CCTV footage, you can see him walking to his friend's house when it said that members from another gang called EB that also beefed with the V2 gang shot at Ksav, but he managed to get away with the bullets barely missing him. This situation here should have been a wake-up call for Ksav that things weren't going his way, but as the day went on, things were not over yet. Only a few hours later, around 11 PM, Ksav and Lzz were driving around Langley Road when their car broke down. They tried to fix it themselves but couldn't, so decided to take a taxi instead. As the cab was pulling up, V3 members Zino and Rico, along with 2 EB members, started running to the taxi screaming Ksav's name, Keelan. You see, the 2 gangs had already hatched up a plan to kill both Ksav and Lzz that night. They had failed to kill Lzz in the altercation at the city centre and failed to assassinate Ksav when he was walking down the street alone, so they had to catch them later that same day. The group, whilst running to the taxi, pulled out zombie knives, which is when Lzz hopped out of the taxi and started running for his life. Ksav, on the other hand, pleaded for the taxi driver to drive, but he was frozen in fear when the teenagers hit the taxi's hood with a machete. The teenagers would drag Ksav out of the taxi and proceeded to stab him 43 times, which is honestly insane. Witnesses were watching horror as they saw the 15-year-old getting attacked for what was said to be 20 whole seconds as his blood spills across the street. The attackers will flee the scene whilst the police and ambulance arrived, but it was too late, and 15-year-old Ksav, aka Keelan Wilson, was pronounced dead at the scene. The police, when attending the crime, even said that it looked like something out of a horror movie. An investigation was now launched into the murder of 15-year-old Keelan Wilson. In the weeks following the murder, around 9 people were arrested but released under investigation due to the lack of evidence. A year later, 3 men will be arrested in relation to the murder. Naheem Tampo, aka Rico from V3, Zane Pennant Phillips, aka Zino from V3, and Tariq King, who was part of the EB gang. But the police were missing one more suspect, and after a year of going through evidence and forensics, they found their 4th suspect, Brian Sasa, who was also part of the EB gang. All 4 suspects will plead not guilty, stating that they were not involved in the murder of Keelan Wilson. The case will now be heard in the Wolverhampton Crown Court in May 2020. The prosecution will argue that this was gang-related crime in a killing between opposing gangs V3 and V2. The prosecution claimed that the 4 defendants, part of the V3 gang, had killed Keelan in retribution for switching gangs. The gang had planned a murder as they knew Keelan was going to be in the area after failing to assassinate him earlier that day. The prosecution gathered fingerprints, CCTV footage and witness statements to back their case, with one of their witnesses being Keelan's dad, Gary Wilson, who told the jury that Keelan and one of the suspects, Naheem Tampo, used to be friends. He also told the jury about a situation when Rico tried to attack Keelan with an axe. There were several key pieces of evidence linking the 4 suspects to the murder of Keelan. Naheem Tampo was found in possession of clothing containing Keelan's blood the day after his death. The DNA and fingerprints of Brian Sasa and Zane Pennant Phillips were found on the door handle of the taxi that they dragged Keelan from.
We have some DNA on some clothing relating to Naheem Tampo, and Brian Sasa was also linked to the taxi forensically as well from one of the rear door handles.
Police will find rap lyrics on Naheem's phone, referencing him stabbing and killing Keelan, showing that he was there at the scene of the crime. Brian Sasa, Naheem Tampo and Tariq King were found guilty and sentenced to 18 years in prison. Zane Pennant Phillips got a reduced sentence of 17 years in prison, as he had no prior convictions. The crazy thing about all this is that if we go back to the V3 music video that Keelan was in, both Naheem and Zane were present in that video, and now they're doing life in prison for the murder of someone who used to be their friend. The thing I find mad about this case is that all these teenagers were so young when all of this happened, and now you got a dead 15-year-old kid with 3 17-year-old kids sitting behind bars as they throw away the rest of their youth by being involved in the gang life. Keelan's mum will speak on the situation, and you can hear the pain in her voice as she talks about her dead son.
Every time I speak on it, it just brings up things that are just impossible to talk about. Everybody knows how close me and Keelan were. Me and Keelan did everything together.
Like I say in every outro, if you take anything from this video, it'd be that the gang life is truly not something you want to be involved in. You got family and friends that fully care for you, so stay smart and let me know in the comments if I missed anything. I'll see you lot in the next one. God bless. Steeler, who gained the name Axeman, will go on to axe 2 teenagers outside of a court as he stood over one of them and delivered 4 blows straight to the head, leaving him with brain damage. Before we get into the video, I just want to say that this video is not to glorify crime in any sort of way, but to provide information on individuals that are part of the UK drill scene. Everything stated in this video is already public information and can be found on forums, articles and multiple news reports. So with all this being said, let's get straight into the video. Steeler is one of the most unhinged individuals I've covered in a while and has some crazy stories. But before I touch on his backstory and what led to him getting the name Axeman, I'll quickly look back at Steeler's involvement in the beef between North London gangs Wood Green and MPK. Wood Green is considered one of the most dangerous areas in London as a whole, and would house the gang WGM, which stands for Wood Green Mob. The Wood Green gang will also go by the name 22, repping the postcode N22 by having members living around the border from Hornsey NA all the way to N13 Palmer's Green. Wood Green Mob over the years will get themselves into beef with many gangs around the area, even staying in a tune, with one of their deadliest beef being the N17 gang, MPK, short for Northumberland Park Killers. MPK, who also go by Sin Squad, are based in the Northumberland Park area, covering the N17 postcode. The gang would be formed as part of a bigger group back in the day called Tottenham Mandem, which no longer exists but had members who are now part of OFB and also MPK, and funny enough were cool with Wood Green. The younger generation of the gang went from playing football and being friends with each other to being forced to pick sides. You can even see pictures with both Wood Green and MPK members chilling together as teenagers. Both these gangs fall under the borough of Haringey, a 15-minute drive from each postcode, but would have intense beef for well over a decade now, with the early stages of the beef being crazy partly because of the main person of this video, Wood Green gang member WGM Steeler. Bienvenu Vangu, aka Steeler, was born in Angola, also of Congolese descent, and in the early 2000s his family would migrate to the UK looking for a better life. He would originally live in Tottenham but would spend most of his time in Wood Green. You see, things weren't really easy for Steeler because he would come to the country like every immigrant not speaking a word of English, and because of this he would get bullied in school, which also affected his behaviour in general. Steeler only met his dad when he first came to the country, and with him getting in trouble and fights at school, he would go on to be put in the care system for a couple of years, which had an impact on the relationship with his family.
My dad, I didn't know my dad didn't know me, we didn't understand each other, so when situations was happening in school and bullying and all the souls, it was one of them things.
Whilst being in care, he'll find out he didn't fit in with everyone else, so he'd often run away and be homeless, sleeping on the streets. He would resort to stealing little things to make ends meet, like deodorant, chocolates and sweets, hence the name Steeler. School would become hard for Steeler, as he would fall behind academically and would start missing several weeks of school, being in and out of a young offenders prison. He was still sleeping on the streets of Wood Green at a very young age and become a target for other gangs. Steeler from a young age would get into situations where he would be mistaken for a gang member by Wood Green rivals, and with him speaking very little English, he would get into fights not even knowing the reason he was fighting. Steeler would become well known to the police for this reason and would see himself behind bars for the first time at just the age of 14. He would now start building friendships with Wood Green gang members, and not long after would be associated with the Wood Green mob. He explained in his documentary that he had enough, and in order to survive, he had to turn himself into a monster.
So it's one of them things I had to survive, I had to turn myself into a monster. You know what I'm saying? Like, I had to be like, cool, like, I know where it is, I know where I'm at, it is where it is now, so it's like, I have to go hard in it, because I never had nothing to lose. I didn't have no family, I never had nothing, to be honest with you. I literally had nothing to lose.
Steeler, now being part of the gang, would become a serious problem, as he claimed he had nothing to lose. Around the early 2000s, he would go on to stab multiple rivals and be in and out of prison for his violence, even going to allegedly shoot an MPK member called Bangisa. Steeler, with his crazy violence, was making a name for himself in the scene, which put a massive target on his back. It won't be long into his gang involvement when he is spotted on his own by M15 members Big Dev, Rev24 and Littles. The three M15 members were going to stab Steeler so bad that he was put into a coma, with hospital staff saying he was already dead. By a miracle, he will survive this attack and make a full recovery, but even after staring death in the face, Steeler didn't care and would be back on the road stating,
"But there's also an incident where you almost lost your life as well. I mean, did you ever fear for your own life?"
We all gonna die one day, innit? So I used to always hear, like, if it's my time, innit?
He would leave the hospital with nothing but revenge on his mind, and he would go on to stab all three members involved in his stabbing and allegedly break the arm of Rev24 in the process. Steeler was a real problem and would pick up where he left off, allegedly stabbing even more MPK members. Steeler was not content with just stabbing and shooting his ops, so he would instead get his hands on an axe with every intention to use it, as what he goes on to do next is one of the most sadistic things I've read in a while. September 1st, 2011, MPK members were attending court for another criminal-related issue, but waiting for them directly outside the magistrate's court was Steeler and other Wood Green members. The court was crowded with what was said to be 30 teenagers. The rival youths would start chasing each other in and out of the court, which is when the security guard would lock the doors to protect the members of public inside. Steeler would then run to the courthouse and pull out a tomahawk-style axe from a plastic bag and start chasing two MPK members with the axe above his head. CCTV would catch the teenagers running for their lives as Steeler chased them with a full-on axe like a madman from hell. 14-year-old MPK member called Mute fell to the floor and Steeler would stand above him and axe him 4 times in the head, leaving him with severe brain damage. The other MPK member tried to escape by running across the road, but Steeler caught up to him, and in a mobile phone recording, you can see him stand above the 15-year-old teenager, raise the axe, and hit 2 hard blows to the teenager's back. Steeler would now flee the scene and dash the axe in some nearby bushes. The court heard that Vangu, aka Steeler, was named as a suspect by security staff at the court, who recognised him due to the number of times he had previously appeared at the court. Steeler was later arrested and appeared in court, this time without an axe. The evidence against him was heavy, and he admitted to wounding, attempted wounding, violent disorder, and possession of the axe. He was sentenced to 6 years and ordered to be on licence for 4 years after his release to protect the public. This honestly sounds like something from a movie, just the way he was chasing people with an axe above his head and hammering down with full intention to kill. After news got out about the incident, Steeler will now get the name Axeman. The craziest part about Steeler and the axe is that this was not his first time nor the last time he would use a weapon, as he allegedly had used the axe before on an M15 member, which has left him in a wheelchair. But this is just an allegation in the drill scene and holds no concrete proof. If you made it this far, it probably means you're finding the video interesting, so drop a like and subscribe to support the channel. Steeler had already had a string of 10 convictions for robbery, violence and carrying a knife before his sentence, and once he did his time and came out around 2017, he was back on the roads doing what he does best, stabbing and axing rivals. I'm not a doctor, but it's clear that Steeler has some serious mental issues and is not afraid to take a life anywhere and anyhow, as he even states in his documentary that he has nothing to lose, and at the time he wasn't even close to his family, so was willing to die in order to kill his ops. One thing I didn't mention was that Steeler would try his luck in the music scene, and had even released a track before his axe spree called F4 Pagans, and once released from prison he was going to drop another track under the alias of V Money called Back Again, but let's just say it's not something you play in your car.
That's 3 times my nigga brought back to life, I'm a god came back again, I'm again. 3 nights, see petting for meditate life, we had plans.
February 20th, 2019. Steeler will get into an argument with another passenger, allegedly a BCM gang member, on the Hammersmith and City train to Barking. The argument will get heated and the two will start fighting on the train, which is when Steeler pulls out a gun and shoots the man straight in the stomach. He then ran off the train at Barking station, leaving the man to stumble into the station grounds and collapse on the floor in a pool of his own blood. He was then rushed to the hospital and had life-saving surgery, but during the fight, Steeler also suffered a stab wound himself from the man and was bleeding heavily. 3 days later, Steeler was traced back to his home in Southend, but he was not trying to go back to prison, so he stood on the roof of a shop building having a standoff with the police. The police would attempt to talk Steeler off the roof, but he was not trying to hear it. The road around the area had to be closed, and after hours of trying to talk Steeler down from the roof, the police would eventually get him off and arrest him before he did anything stupid. Bear in mind, Steeler was still on licence whilst all this is happening. September 4th, 2019, Steeler will be sentenced to 13 years behind bars and would have to serve a further 4 years on licence because of the threat he poses to the public. The guy who also stabbed Steeler on the train was charged with possession of a blade and wounding with intent. Whilst in prison, Steeler will start to focus more on his music, which to this day drill fans continue to mock, because again, he's not the best of rappers out there.
That same night, someone in T-go touch, I leave it short like Kobe, chest shot like Prime, I make it fly like chaos, cook like chicken, shoot up your mum, drive by like Tanisha, 6 job 14.
The thing about Steeler is that he didn't really care about anything that happened, and he liked the attention that he was getting from the violence he was doing. He responded to a post of someone stating that he's axed up to 6 people, stabbed 20 and shot 8 gang members. Steeler would respond with, "Tell these people this is my weekly routine on the roads to get these facts correct," further bragging about him stabbing and axing all these different rivals. He would even state in the documentary that when he was gangbanging, he would go to jail just so he can catch his ops.
This youth nowadays, they don't know about the meaning of gangbang. When I was gangbanging, I was going to jail just to catch my ops. My main thing was to drop off. My main thing was to get to places, lie to them, turn them up from Tottenham, manipulate them just to see them, just to catch them, just to do things to them. And they know that.
As of 2024 to 2025, not much is known about what Steeler is doing as he rides his prison sentence. But around 2022, he'll be chilling with a rival OFB member, and he states he can do whatever he wants and no one can do anything about it. It seems Steeler doesn't really care about the gang beef no more and just simply beefs whoever he wants. The last thing that Steeler will post from prison was state how he doesn't care how close you are to him and he won't stop until you're dead. I'm not too sure what this means and what exactly he's trying to say, but he pretty much sums it up by saying, "I got swallowed by darkness." It's quite sad how Bienvenu Vangu went from a young kid who moved to the UK, not speaking English, to one of the most violent individuals London has ever seen. A man who axed 2 teenagers outside of a court in broad daylight in front of everyone and will be in and out of prison at just the age of 14. To this day, the UK drill scene talk about Steeler and everything he's done. It's probably for the best that he remains locked up, because God knows who he's gonna axe next, as he made it clear that people close to him can hold it too. Like I say in every outro, if you take anything from this video, let it be that the gang life is truly not something you want to be involved in. You got family and friends that fully care for you, so stay smart and let me know in the comments if I missed anything. I'll see you lot in the next one. God bless.
If you ask anyone about man, they'll tell you my thing is the whole of London. You know what I'm trying to say to you? Because I had enough of seeing man doing this, doing that, this and that. But all of them know, every single one of them boroughs know, like there's not a lot of man that can talk to me. That's the fact, you know what I'm saying?
The 16-year-old boy who was killed in his bedroom by gang members with machetes in front of his own mum, as one of the members fled to Gambia for 2 years in order to avoid arrest.
I literally just fell to pieces. I just didn't know what to do.
I actually just fell to the ground.
I just yelled, I just screamed, I screamed, and I started to go into a panic.
Romario Gordon forced his way into Cameron Smith's home in South London with a group before stabbing him to death in front of his mother in her bedroom.
This story takes place in Croydon, South London, a borough known for being dangerous, with multiple stabbings and shootings taking place in only the space of a year. This case won't be any different because it's linked to the heavy gang war running through the Croydon area. The gang war I'm referring to is LPW versus CR0, but the gang relevant to this case is LPW, which is an alliance of smaller gangs in Croydon who share the same beef. LPW stands for Lil Patch's World and was formed after his death. You see, Lil Patch's body was found in the River Thames, with it being alleged that the rival gang tied his feet together and threw him in the river to die. But to this day, the case remains unsolved. Some of the groups that are part of LPW consist of STK, Stab to Kill, Fifth, VP, Valley Park and Green Lanes. The victim in this case, Cameron Smith, was allegedly part of the STK gang, also known as S-Town, and will go by the name Lzz. The suspects involved in the killing were part of the Green Lanes gang, with the main suspect, Romario Gordon, going by the name Lil Grinner. With the two gangs being in alliance, you're probably asking yourself why this murder took place. But you see, the Green Lanes gang would have a falling out with the rest of the LPW alliance after the death of another gang member called Jets. On the 8th of August 2017, a Valley Park gang member called Jets will be chilling with Green Lane members, but around 11 PM, rival members from the CR0 gang will pull up and begin chasing them with large machetes and wearing balaclavas. The CR0 members will catch up to Jets and start stabbing him multiple times until his body stopped moving. The Green Lane members were already long gone by this time, and Jets was pronounced dead in hospital a couple hours later from severe blood loss. An investigation was launched which saw the arrest of 4 different CR0 members, and these 4 will be found guilty for the murder of Jets. They were sentenced to life with a minimum of 22 years, 20 years and 18 years, with the girl in the group getting 12 years for manslaughter. The death of Jets caused a divide between Green Lanes and the rest of the LPW gangs, as they blamed G Lane for leaving Jets to die. This will kickstart the tit-for-tat violence in Croydon between gangs that were once cool with each other. A couple weeks before this case takes place, it's alleged that LPW members had robbed and stabbed a Green Lanes member, and once the gang got news of what happened, they wasted no time and started planning their revenge. On the evening of Wednesday the 30th of June 2021, Romario and what is believed to be 3 other Green Lane members robbed a taxi driver in Streatham, stealing his cab at knife point. They then used the stolen vehicle to drive across South London, entering multiple addresses in Croydon, looking for the people that attacked the member while armed with zombie knives. At the first address they broke into, a woman asleep in her bed was woken up by a masked man in the room. Whoever the gang was looking for was not in that house. The group gained access to the second address but left within seconds. CCTV captured the gang moving from location to location, carrying weapons and wearing masks. Then around midnight on the 1st of July 2021, the gang forced their way into a house on Bacon Avenue in Croydon. This being the house of 16-year-old Cameron Smith, also known as Lzz, from Lzz Stown. The gang kicked open the front door and started to attack Cameron, who was downstairs at the time. After a bit of a struggle, Cameron managed to get away and run upstairs to a bedroom, where he attempted to barricade himself and his mother inside. The gang forced their way to the bedroom and now pulled out large knives said to be around 16 inches in length. The mum, fearing for her son's life, stretched out her arms in between her son and the group in an attempt to stop them. She was even able to disarm one of the attackers by grabbing onto the weapon. But within minutes, Cameron, who was unarmed and dressed only in his underwear, was surrounded and stabbed multiple times in front of his mum. Police and ambulance would later arrive following calls from neighbours about a robbery going on. But when the emergency services arrived, they were shocked to see a 16-year-old boy laying in a pool of his own blood as his mum cries for him to wake up. It was already too late as 16-year-old Cameron Smith died at the scene of the crime in front of his own mum. An investigation will now be launched into the murder of Cameron Smith. Detectives gathered CCTV from buses, streets and doorbell cameras. They found a pattern. The group had entered 3 separate addresses that night, and the attack on Cameron was part of their revenge plan to hunt down anyone involved in the attack on their friend. During the investigation, the police will hit a gold mine once they recovered a stolen taxi cab that had been abandoned in Hastings Road. Inside that taxi, forensic officers they recovered fingerprints and DNA evidence linking members of the group to the cab. This DNA evidence will be crucial in identifying all the suspects. The police will now start hunting down suspects based on witness statements and forensic evidence. Several members of what police described as Thornton Heath drug gangs were on their radar. 2 16-year-old boys were arrested but managed to get away with lesser charges of robbery, and there wasn't enough evidence directly linking them to the murder. The police kept on digging and were able to arrest 19-year-old James Olympecan from Croydon. James was their biggest catch so far, as forensic evidence showed he was present in the room when Cameron was stabbed and had been in the taxi when the group was entering houses. James was jailed for 8 years for manslaughter and robbery following a trial in February 2023. The police were closing down on their suspects and the list was getting smaller. 3 names will now come into the picture: Romain Lapierre, Jordan Checo, and last but not least, Romario Gordon. The police were able to track down and arrest Romain and Jordan, but Romario was nowhere to be found. You see, 2 days after the murder, Romario knew he messed up, so he fled the UK via Heathrow Airport all the way to Gambia to avoid arrest as he had family there. I think it should be noted that this isn't Romario's first rodeo, and he's managed to beat a murder case before, back in 2020. On the 8th of March 2020, Romario, who was 16 years old at the time, was accused of stabbing 17-year-old Damani Mauj in the chest and neck as they were fighting on the 130 bus in Croydon. Damani collapsed on the pavement after the fight spilled on the street, which is when Romario tried to steal the gold chain on his neck as Damani was dying on the floor. While giving evidence in court, Romario denied intending to kill Damani, claiming it was an accident. He told jurors he carried a large hunting knife for his own protection and only got it out to fend off Damani, who was trying to attack him. The jury deliberated for 27 hours but found Romario not guilty of murder and even manslaughter, which is honestly insane in my opinion. But ultimately, Romario was able to beat the charges and was only found guilty of possession of an offensive weapon. You see, whilst Romario was hiding in Gambia for this murder case, Romain Lapierre and Jordan Checo will stand trial for their involvement in the death of Cameron Smith. The court was told it was Romain who used a zombie knife and stabbed Cameron in the stomach. Romain had previous convictions for carrying knives, including a samurai sword, machete, and hunting knife. In October 2023, Romain Lapierre was given a life sentence with a minimum of 28 years behind bars for murder and robbery. In relation to Jordan Checo, he had previous convictions related to him carrying kitchen knives in public. It was also found that he joined the G-Lane gang back when he was 13 years old after witnessing the stabbing of a close friend at the age of 10. Jordan was sentenced to 14 years in prison for manslaughter as he was present when Cameron was being stabbed. The police were now doing all that they can to get Romario Gordon back in the UK so they can charge him for his involvement in the murder. The Met issued an international arrest warrant for Romario, but it seems he was well hidden in Gambia as no one knew his whereabouts. For unknown reasons, Romario made a return back to the UK 2 years later in August 2023. He was arrested straight away at the airport and taken into custody. The police had finally captured a man who managed to escape and could finally close the case. Even though Romario was hiding in Gambia, the police never stopped building up their case and now had a mountain of evidence on him. It was said that Romario was part of the masked group that forced entry into multiple homes that night, looking for certain people linked to an earlier stabbing. After Cameron's death, Romario was captured on CCTV, fleeing in a stolen minicab and disposing of a large knife shortly after the attack. The DNA from the stolen minicab was used to link him to the events of that night. So in conclusion, 22-year-old Romario Gordon was not the person who delivered the fatal stab wound that killed Cameron, but his presence, flight, possession of weapons, and forensic links provided enough evidence for the jury to convict him of manslaughter. At the time of recording this, Romario's sentence hasn't been handed down yet, but he was found guilty of manslaughter in September 2025 and will be sentenced at a later date. This case is just sad and goes to show you how gang involvement doesn't just affect the individual, but affects your family and friends as well. The fact that a mother had to watch her 16-year-old son get stabbed multiple times right in front of her is just a different level of pain. Romario had taken a life prior to this case and was able to get away with it, but the fact he still involved himself in this sort of lifestyle is just straight up mental illness. All these teenage boys are risking their freedom and some are becoming victims to the streets, all for a postcode that they don't even own. If you take anything from this video, please let it be that the gang life is just stupid and is not something you want to be involved in. Go out and put your energy into something else, and I'll see you lot in the next one. God bless. A 30-year-old gang member and father of two who would attempt to escape an attack but got shot in the back as the bullet pierces his heart, all in the space of a couple seconds. This story takes place in Wolverhampton, a city and metropolitan borough in the West Midlands of England. Wolverhampton was once considered the most dangerous city in the West Midlands because of the increasing gang crime and several drug operations running through the city. One of the more recent and serious cases of gang violence in Wolverhampton was that of 15-year-old Keelan Wilson, who was literally stabbed 43 times because he decided to switch gangs, which goes to show you how ruthless this sort of lifestyle is. If you haven't already seen that video, go ahead and check it out after this one. The main person of this case is 30-year-old Jermaine Smith. Jermaine was described by his mother as a bright, loving and respectful young man with so many dreams ahead of him. But what the family may not have known is that Jermaine Smith was also a well-known gang member who went by the name of Gotti from UTH or Gotti from UpTop. The UTH in his name stands for Upper Tulse Hill, which is based in South London, with members of the gang also going by the name UpTop. UTH is based in the London borough of Lambeth, in a district called Tulse Hill, and would have heavy tit-for-tat violence, with the other area going by the name of Lower Tulse Hill. The gang war between these two areas would get so bad that people living within each area would basically be forced to beef each other, somewhat similar to how in Rapman's Blue story, Marco and Timmy are forced into beef all because they lived in different sides of a gang war that they weren't involved in.
Timmy's like, what's wrong? Marco's like, what you mean? The man are from your end, so that means you're on their team. I'm a Peckham boy, and you're a GB. That's two different sides, so that's you against me.
Like stated before, because both of these gangs are just roads away from each other, they will also be situated in the same postcode, but different estates. A teenager at the time who would be involved in this gang beef and would become a prominent member of UTH is Jermaine Smith, aka Gotti. Not too much is known about Gotti, as he kept things very private compared to others who lived the gang life. But from what we know, Gotti would rep the UpTop gang throughout his teenage years, where it said that once he had a child, he would take a small step back from the street life to look after his kid. The only thing with this is that once you're involved in this sort of lifestyle, it's really hard to walk away from everything, because you end up falling back to bad habits, or you have people in the area who are still looking to hurt you. Gotti will stay in London for a while, but then heads up to Wolverhampton, which is about a 3-hour drive away from London. It's not actually stated how long Gotti was in Wolverhampton for, as there's speculations he was OT, which means out trapping or out of town. Gang members will typically do this, and they'll go to suburban areas to sell drugs and make their money. With Gotti still being affiliated with the UTH gang, it's not known if he was in Wolverhampton for any good reason. Let's just say whilst Gotti was in Wolverhampton, he'll start getting comfortable with other gang members in the area, which was also getting him involved in gang politics. People will start talking, and there's alleged he joined the set in the Wolverhampton gang while still being a part of UTH. On the 25th of October 2025, around 12:15 AM, you can see Gotti and a friend talking and joking with someone in a black car before laughing as the car drives off. The two would walk up to the flat entrance, with Gotti, who was wearing a grey jacket, stopping just outside the door and looking for something in his pocket before entering. Shortly after, you can see a man in a long black jacket walk up to the door before he could close and pulls out a gun from his pocket, before aiming it straight down at the corridor where Gotti and his friend was and letting off a shot.
Hi, you are currently being recorded.
In another angle of the shooting, you can see Gotti's friend look back at the gunman before running around the corner, and just as Gotti was also about to run around the corner, the gunman let off the shot and they hit him straight in the back. Gotti, from all the adrenaline, was able to run straight in the room and close the door, while the gunman ran off from the same direction he came from. In the footage, you can also hear muffled voices and sounds coming from the room where Gotti had been shot. From what I can make of the voices, it seemed that there was a girl in the room who was asking Gotti's friend what exactly happened. I'm assuming the banging noises you can hear is from the pair trying to stop the bleeding as Gotti was hit with a bullet. I'm going to play some of the footage now, and do let me know in the comments if you can make out what exactly was being said in that room. Police and ambulance would later arrive, but it was already too late. The bullet that hit Gotti in the back had apparently pierced his heart and led to severe bleeding. Jermaine Smith, aka Gotti UpTop, was pronounced dead at the scene at just the age of 30. An investigation will be launched into the murder of Gotti, with police appealing for any information that can help with the case. A couple days later, officers arrested 4 people, 2 men aged 18 and 19, and a 16-year-old girl. Not too much came from this arrest, and the police will continue digging. Later in the investigation, 4 more arrests were made, and a 40-year-old woman and 2 men aged 18 and 41 were arrested on suspicion of assisting an offender, but were released on bail with strict conditions as the investigation continues. The murder of Gotti remains unsolved, as the police appeal for any information on the gunman and the motive behind the attack. Gotti's mum will speak out on her son's death, as she says, "Losing him in such a cruel and senseless way has destroyed me. No mother should ever have to bury her child. Every day I wake up wishing this was just a bad dream. My family and I are broken, and all we want now is justice for my son, so his soul can finally rest in peace. Love you, son." If we look back at the footage, you can see the gunman appear as soon as Gotti and his friend entered that flat, almost as if he was watching them and just waiting for the right time. This could have been a planned attack in which they knew where Gotti was staying at. Whether or not he was the intended target is still unknown, with it being said that this could have also been a case of mistaken identity, but it's very unlikely because, like previously mentioned, Gotti was allegedly involved with gang members from that Wolverhampton area. The murder of Gotti is still very new, with more information coming out every day. His friend managed to get away from the shooting, but Gotti was just a split second away from turning that corner and would have still been alive today. All it took was one bullet to take the life of a father. This is why the gang life is not something you should be involved in, and it's one of the dumbest things you can do with your life. Please go put your energy into something that will actually benefit you in life, and I'll see you guys in the next one. God bless. The Beckford Brothers, who went by street names Muscles and Dreads, were going to be involved in multiple murders, as both brothers now sit in jail serving life sentences of a combined 50 years.
Sort of feeling that they were untouchable and that they could do that and not have to worry about the consequences.
This story takes place in Birmingham, a city in the West Midlands region of England. With Birmingham being the second largest city in the UK, it's prone to a lot of gang violence and drug operations. And in the late 90s, around Handsworth and Soho Road, a gang will now start to emerge, known as the Burger Bar Boys. The Burger Bar Boys got their name from a local burger bar around the area, where members used to meet up and bonded over their financial struggles. The gang would be involved in drug dealings and robberies, but on the other side of the field, you had the Johnson crew from Aston, who would become their biggest rivals. It's not really known what caused the war between the two gangs, with people speculating this was over petty things like PlayStation Street Fighter bets and small arguments, but escalated into what would be a deadly war that saw multiple people lose their lives. You see, the war between the Burger Bar Boys and the Johnson crew turned the two areas into a hunting ground, with drive-by shootings becoming an everyday thing, and teenagers getting attacked outside of community centres, barbershops, and even on their way to college. In December 2002, a Burger Bar member called Johan Martin was in his car, parked up in West Bromwich, when several men ambushed him and he was gunned down and killed. The Burger Boys got news of what happened, and Johan's brother Nathan believed the Johnson crew were behind his brother's death, so now they had to even the scores. A couple months after, on New Year's Eve, A party will be happening in the Aston area where the Johnson crew are based. The Burger Boys will get news of the party, and this is now their chance to get their revenge for the murder of their member. Nathan and the other members bought a red Ford Mondeo and will drive it up to the Aston area where the party was taking place. The gang will spot a group of teenagers who are believed to be part of the Johnson crew, and in the blink of an eye, they will open fire at a crowd of people. The gang let off multiple shots, but instead of hitting the group of boys, they ended up accidentally shooting and killing 17-year-old Charlene Ellis and 18-year-old Letitia Shakespeare. The gang also shot and injured 2 other innocent people who were friends of Charlene and Letitia. 2 years later, Nathan and the other 3 Burger Boy boys were convicted of murder and given a life sentence. This incident is just one of the many tit-for-tat violence that was running rampant in the area, and shows you how truly dangerous the Burger Bar gang was. In this dangerous gang, you had the 2 brothers, Cairo and Tafara Beckford. In the Burger Bar gang, Cairo had a street named Muscles because of his stature, and Tafara was known as Dreads or Charmer. These 2 brothers were respected members of the gang and would be involved in multiple robberies and shootings from a young age. The Beckford Brothers are half-brothers of the famous singer and actress Jamelia Davis, but when her career took off, the brothers were still trapped in the gang life and would cause havoc in the streets of Birmingham before everything came to an end. The first brother, Cairo Beckford, known on the streets as Muscles, was just 21 years old when he and 3 others carried out a cold-blooded execution. You see, before this execution, a Burger Bar member, Brent Aslow, was robbed by a rival gang called the Raiders. Burger Boy boys, being known for their revenge attacks, won't let this slide and had to get one back on the gang. In August 2003, Cairo, Brett and 2 other members will go on a ride out in the estate known as the Concrete Jungle, where they believe Raiders gang members would be around. They then spotted 19-year-old Daniel Bogle walking around the area. Cairo believed that Daniel was part of the Raiders gang, so with their mask on, the group approached Daniel, and without hesitation, Cairo shot him in the head 3 times at point-blank range, before running off with a gun still in his hand. CCTV footage will catch Cairo and the gang celebrating in a nearby pub just 15 minutes after the shooting. But the main issue here was that Daniel was an innocent teenager who was not part of the Raiders gang and had no involvement in the gang beef. Cairo had mistaken him for a Raiders member and in short ended up killing an innocent 19-year-old student. An investigation was now launched, and with CCTV footage, all members were caught and will now have to stand trial. During this trial, this is when the media made connections that Cairo Beckford was the half-brother of singer Jamelia Davis. It was also found that Cairo Beckford was cleared of another murder in 2001 when police raided Jamelia's mother's house to arrest him. Cairo Beckford and the others will all be sentenced to life with a minimum of 18 years for the brutal killing of Daniel Bogle. 2 years later, Cairo would attempt to appeal the decision, but it was denied, and Daniel's mother will speak out on the appeal, stating that, "It disgusts me that he should even be allowed to do that. He has never shown an ounce of remorse for his actions, nor has any of his family. My family is still trying to come to terms with what happened to Daniel, and this appeal is not helping." On the other side of the coin, you have Tafara Beckford, known on the streets as Dreads or Charmer. You see, Tafara had a history with the police and was also a well-respected member in the Burger Bar gang. He's believed to be tied to a lot of murders and will often go on ride-outs with his brother, Cairo. On March 1st, 2000, a Johnson crew member called Christopher Clark would be in a nightclub in Small Heath when he was punched and stabbed to death with champagne bottles by a gang of 10 teenagers. Allegedly, Tafara was one of the teenagers involved in the stabbing. This was a retaliation hit for the murder of Johan Martin, previously mentioned, who was shot several times while sitting in his car. The then 17-year-old Tafara was accused of the murder and ordered to stand trial. The prosecutors instead proceeded with a lesser charge of affray, for which Beckford pled guilty and received a 30-month sentence. Later in 2003, Tafara was arrested and accused of being involved in the murder of Charlene and Letitia in the botched shooting at a party in Aston, which I previously touched on. Tafara was however cleared mid-trial due to a lack of evidence. This should have been a wake-up call for Tafara, but he thought he was untouchable after getting away with everything. But this will all come to an end around 2015. On the 30th of October 2015, Tafara and the Burger Bar gang will be present at the Big Bang Snooker Club, Soho Hill, Birmingham. The gang had a falling out between the two factions, and things would start getting heated at the club around 4 AM. In CCTV footage, you can see Tafara, marked as number 20, gestured to Derek Myers during an altercation between the two factions of the Burger Bar gangs. The dispute will now be taken outside, which is when things escalated and punches start being thrown, with a massive brawl now taking place. During the brawl, a close friend of Tafara, Marvin Duffus, was stabbed and shot in the head 6 times, which left him brain damaged. Tafara will see his friend in a pool of blood, which is when he now goes on the hunt for the person who shot his friend. A minute after, he ends up finding the person who shot his friend, but wanted to even the scores. So instead, Tafara aims the gun at the shooter's right-hand man, Derek Myers, and fires 2 shots. One hit Myers in the jaw and the other one in the chest, killing him straight away. The shooting happened in full view of the public, with bus passengers witnessing the whole thing. CCTV footage will capture Tafara walking away after the shooting whilst holding the gun in his right hand. An investigation will now be launched into the murder of Derek Myers and attempted murder of Marvin Duffus. Despite 150 people being present at the club where the shooting happened, only a handful of people came forward to provide statements, which left the police with limited information. The police now had to sift through hours of CCTV footage and would use camera footage from a bus passing nearby to get the full story of what happened. Visual imagery experts pieced together the movements of all parties involved and now had a key suspect, Tafara Beckford. Tafara Beckford, knowing the police will come looking for him, will go on the run, and because the police knew his nickname was Dreads, he'll carve his dreadlocks to try hide and avoid arrest. 15 days as a wanted man, Tafara would finally be caught and now charged with the murder of Derek Myers. Tafara had 3 separate trials due to hung juries in November 2016 and April 2018. The media will once again find that Tafara is another one of the half-brothers of singer Jamelia. So for the final trial, he tried under the name Theodore Beckford to prevent bias from his gang reputation and relation to Jamelia. A Colt revolver used to shoot Marvin Duffus was found by West Midlands police months later, hidden in the bedroom of an address in Rowland Street, Birmingham. 2 women were suspected of holding guns for the gang, were jailed for 5 years. December 14th, 2018, Tafara Beckford was found guilty of murdering Derek Myers and was given a life sentence. He has been ordered to serve a minimum of 32 years in prison before he is considered for release. This is one of the longest gang-related sentencing in Birmingham. The Beckford brothers will now be sitting in jail with life sentences to their name. As members of the gang grew older and slowly started leaving the criminal life, the Burger Bar boys being a fading memory of a dangerous and violent gang that ran the streets of Birmingham. Jamelia would later speak about her half-brother Cairo in an interview and how his life changed whilst in prison.
For rehabilitation, I actually have a brother in prison who is doing 18 years for committing murder. When he went into prison, he was, he was the type of person who would have committed a murder. He was 18 years old. Now he is a man. He's going to come out of prison as a changed man, and I think there's a lot to be said for the work that has been done to rehabilitate him.
The Beckford brothers lived a life of violence and crime, and in the end this led to them becoming murderers and spending the majority of their lives behind bars. Like I say in every outro, if you take anything from this video, it'd be that the gang life is truly not something you want to be involved in. You got family and friends that fully care for you, so stay smart and let me know in the comments if I missed anything. I'll see you lot in the next one. God bless. Krashcorn SOS, one of the most tapped individuals to ever come into the drill scene, as he leaves a mother with internal bleeding and puts a 2-year-old child in a coma with life-changing injuries.
And if we allow something like this to become a norm, a lot more parents and a lot more families are going to have to suffer. This is something that should never happen.
Before we get into the video, I just want to say that this video is not to glorify crime in any sort of way, but to provide information on individuals that are part of the UK drill scene. Everything stated in this video is already public information and can be found on forums, articles and multiple news reports. So with all this being said, let's get straight into the video. The London Borough of Brent will house well-known opposing gangs, SOS and CSB, who will go by many names over the years, such as TOS, Thugs of Stonebridge and CRS, Church Road Soldiers. The gang war between the two sides will go on for 2 whole decades, with the older generation of the gangs having famous UK rappers from each side, like Nines and K Coke, and can be a whole video on its own. But you see, the sad reality of this beef is that both estates are located in the same Harlesden area in the postcode NW10. Both areas are about a 5-minute walk from each other, so would lead to crazy back and forth violence, despite both areas being unified at one point in time. Krashcorn is part of the younger generation of Stonebridge members who rap the gang SOS, which stands for Shoot on Sight, and will beef the newer generation of Church Road members, CSB, which stands for Crime Scene Boys. Before I touch on why Krashcorn is a very tapped individual, I'll quickly look back at the gang violence between the two groups that led to Krashcorn taking matters into his own hands and going way too far. Like mentioned before, the violence between the two areas was at an all-time high during the 2018 to 2019 period, and around the summer of 2019, popular rapper Nines would be driving his Porsche when he was spotted by Stonebridge gang members Mad Beak and AR Top Shotter. Nines' cousin, who was with him at the time, attempted to shoot at the pair but the gun jammed, which is when Mad Beak and AR would chase after Nines, leading to him crashing his car. Nines' cousin would then split up as the Stonebridge random chased them. AR and Big would catch up to Nines and stab him straight in the face. AR would record himself chasing Nines and upload it to Snapchat, incriminating himself because police used the footage as evidence in the courtroom, and he was later sentenced for the stabbing. When the news broke of Nines being stabbed, CSB went into full retaliation mode, and a week after the stabbing, a member of Nines set ICB called Scraps would be driving around the area when he spotted a Stonebridge member called Smalls outside of a chicken shop in Marks Park. This led to CSB members exchanging phone calls and text messages to carry out a successful assassination without getting caught. Scraps drove the shooter to the location of Smalls, which is when he ran and shot him in the head in front of his son on CCTV. The shooter appears to run away until he goes back to the body and lets off another shot to really make sure Smalls is dead. Smalls was rushed to the hospital but was pronounced dead just a couple hours after. But the gang wasn't done yet, and on the same day, they will spot a CHB member called Big French. The same unidentified shooter will run up to Big French as he sat in the car with his kids. The shooter will pull the trigger on French's head, but only by the grace of God, the gun will jam and the shooter will run off whilst being filmed on CCTV. A murder investigation will be launched, and years later, Scraps, Jazzy, YD and Streets, who were involved in the murder of Smalls, were later arrested and awaiting trial. Corny Ellis, aka Jazzy, will be identified as a shooter for the murder of Smalls and attempted murder of Big French. Jazzy will get slapped with a life sentence with a minimum term of 35 years. Christopher Kai, aka Scraps, will be sentenced to 4.5 years for perverting the course of justice. The mad thing about these shootings is that kids are around when all this is happening, and they should not be exposed to this sort of stupidness, because when we later touch on what Krashcorn did, you'll understand why. Following the death of Smalls, the Stonebridge gang were seeing straight red, and without any proof, they'll blame a gang called SR, aka St. Raphael's. The next day, an SR member called GK was shot numerous times while sitting in his car. Luckily, he was covering his head with his arms, and the bullets will only strike his arm, leaving him with a minor injury rather than a fatal bullet to the head. Thug of Stonebridge member M1 would be arrested for the attempted murder and jailed. In the space of 24 hours from this incident, Beefy will round up Stonebridge members to go after the leader of St. Raphael's gang called Patman, also known as Bucky. The gang wanted to make an example by going after the main member at the time. Beefy and Stonebridge members saw an innocent man called Kwasi Mensah walking out of a cost cutter shop. They followed him to the park, which is when Beefy shot him in the head at point blank range whilst he was eating his food on the bench. This was a case of mistaken identity, as Kwasi looked similar to Patman, who was the intended target. People at the time would be confused how these assassinations are just going on in broad daylight, leading to a young innocent man having his life cut short for no reason at all. All members involved in the planning and shooting will be arrested and charged a couple months after the murder. Out of all the cases I've covered, this one is truly upsetting because Kwasi was just a regular hard-working guy working 3 jobs trying to make ends meet. He had no gang affiliation and was not known to the police at all. On that day, he clocked out his shift at Sainsbury's and was simply just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Rest in peace, Kwasi Mensah, and our thoughts and prayers go out to his family and friends. If you made it this far, it probably means you're enjoying the video, so drop a like and subscribe to support the channel. With the beef between the two sides briefly covered, let's get on to the main person of this video called Krashcorn from Stonebridge SOS. You see, Krashcorn was more known for his violence on the streets than his music overall. He will constantly patrol church roadsides looking for ops.
Where you at? Where that? How's it?
Nah, Church Road. On the mains.
I'm ending the live. I'm cutting out, man.
Oh, cool, son.
Guys like you, bro. Guys like you. Don't laugh, bro.
I said that hit me.
Just to show you the levels of unhinged we're dealing with, it's rumoured that Krashcorn shot his own dad in the leg over a personal issue. This is just rumours around the UK drill scene, as there isn't any concrete evidence, but I won't put it past this guy to do something like this. On the 6th of June 2020, CBS members will throw a party after being released from prison. Krashcorn will get the drop of the party and will ride out on a moped looking for any CSB members. CCTV footage around the area will spot Krashcorn riding his ped to the party. Krashcorn will spot a CSB member called YB who was involved in the murder of Smalls, and he starts letting off shots. He will hit YB in the arm before aiming his gun at YB's baby mother and shooting her 5 times in the chest. Krashcorn, knowing that there's a child present, will continue firing his gun and shoots the 2-year-old son of YB in the head before riding off on the ped. The mother of the child will sustain serious injuries and would have internal bleeding but managed to survive the attack. As for the 2-year-old child, he was put in a coma but survived, but will have life-changing injuries due to being shot in the head. Krashcorn will be arrested and charged with triple attempted murder, but will end up being the case due to a lack of evidence, with most of the evidence coming from witness statements that couldn't identify the shooter. It's one thing to shoot at another gang member, but to shoot at a mother 5 times and put a 2-year-old child in a coma has to be a different level of mental illness. YD's mother will speak on the situation, and you can hear the pain in her voice.
This could have been a situation that turned out completely different. We're just lucky that my grandchild and my daughter are still here with us today, but it's really important that the community remembers that this is something that it was only by a miracle that we're here to talk about, but he definitely needs to be off the road, off the streets.
Krashcorn will later post a deleted snap saying SHIT happens, disregarding the fact that he literally shot a little toddler in the head. The CSB gang will retaliate by shooting and killing Krashcorn's dad in Jamaica as a way to settle the scores. Krashcorn couldn't care less about the shootings and the innocent lives lost, because he will go on to release a track that got deleted off YouTube called Let's Go, where he brags about all the different Stonebridge shootings and the stabbings he's done. In the track, Krashcorn will say,
He looked like Pac-Man so he got ghost.
He looked like Pac-Man so he got ghost, referencing the Kwasi mistaken identity shooting like it's some sort of game, and he doesn't care that Kwasi was innocent because he looked like Pac-Man. He will follow this up with,
You weren't the intended target, but I pressed it once and I got 2 haters.
The one intended target. This is referencing the shooting of the mother and toddler and how Krashcorn got trigger happy and had no problem shooting at the other 2 victims who, like he says, weren't the intended targets. Krashcorn is honestly a very odd guy, and the drill scene will heavily mock him for this situation, especially the fact that the guy shot an innocent mother and her child and will go on to brag about it like it's some sort of trophy. News will go around the community that Krashcorn was stabbed by a church road member called Lzz, and around 2022, Krashcorn was posted on Instagram alluding to him leaving the road life. I'm not too sure how genuine this post is and whether or not he was just joking around. To this day, Krashcorn is considered one of the most tapped individuals in the scene, Up there with people like young Diz, who literally kidnapped and tortured school children.
Talking about me, my brother.
It's truly sad that a lot of innocent people were hurt during this beef, and children had to witness this sort of stuff. Like I say in every outro, if you take anything from this video, let it be that the gang life is truly not something you want to be involved in. You got family and friends that fully care for you, so stay smart and let me know in the comments if I missed anything. I'll see you lot in the next one. God bless. The gang members who went around stabbing random people in broad daylight in order to impress their leader and not get de-recruited from their gang. This story takes place in Hackney, a borough in London that is known for its heavy gang violence and at one point was considered one of the most dangerous boroughs in London. Over the years, the streets of Hackney have actually gotten a lot better, but we can't forget the countless lives that have been lost over gang violence in the area. The gang relevant to this case is Stokey16, who also go by the name The 16 and are based in Stoke Newington, North London. The name 16 comes from the N16 postcode, an area that's been in the heart of North London's gang violence for years. The Stokey16 Gang have been around for a decade, with newer gang members of RPG also being part of Stokey16. They'll have tit-for-tat violence with the surrounding areas in Wood Green and Tottenham. The younger generation of Stokey16 will start releasing drill music videos that will pick up traction in the genre, with members like NCO and Lzz allegedly having killed multiple rivals during their come-up. With the gang having stabbed and killed multiple people, the younger members were now expected to follow in their footsteps and start doing the same thing. On the 26th of April 2019, an 18-year-old member of the Stokey16 Gang called Theo Mamadou got a text message from an unknown number. This message was from one of the respected elders of the gang who was in prison at the time, but was heavily involved in street activity. This older member was not happy with the youngers in the gang because they haven't killed or stabbed anyone and was threatening to kick them out of the gang if they don't go out and stab someone by next week. I'll try to break down this text message for you, but you're gonna have to bear with me because at some points it doesn't even make sense. But the message read, "Show the rest of the YGs this. If they don't, you man ain't giving the reports I want to hear about you man on the streets. And even Mish ain't happy cuz if you lot don't get someone down by next week, forget being Stokey on God. When I was your age, I had 10 names on my blade. You ain't hurt a single soul and you're screaming my gang. Bruv, mums don't make me have to come out of jail and punch you man up at what the man as older do. You ain't even trying to ride out. This ain't gonna work." Theo, receiving that text, felt pressure to go out and stab someone just so he can remain part of the gang and have respect from his older, which in my opinion is just straight up stupidity. But like instructed from his boss, Theo told the rest of the youngers that they had to act soon, this being 20-year-old Taylor Isaac and David Kerrigan. The three gang members now hatched up a plan the same day that they were going to stab anyone that they could find just so they could have a name on their blade and impress their older. They armed themselves with knives and machetes and picked up some balaclavas to hide their face. The group were later picked up by an unidentified man driving a stolen white SUV. They patrolled Brent House Road looking for anyone that they can stab. This is when they come across a grey Mercedes with some teenagers inside and chase the car down, trying to ram and attack the people inside. After the Mercedes got away, the gang were now looking for someone else that they can stab, which is when they spot 29-year-old Joshua White walking down the street. You see, Joshua White was an innocent man just going about his life. It's alleged that Joshua was involved in gang activity when he was younger, but he left that life a long time ago and was just an innocent guy who was aspiring to be a train driver. Theo Mamadou, Taylor Isaac and David Kerrigan now jump out of the SUV and start chasing Joshua with large machetes. Joshua ran for his life, not really knowing what was going on. CCTV shows Joshua running towards a shop in Frampton Park Road and accidentally collides with a 6-year-old girl on roller skates. Both of them fell to the floor, and Joshua was going to go up and check on the girl until Theo and Taylor caught up to him, brandishing machetes. Joshua got up and quickly ran into the shop, but before he could get inside, he was stabbed multiple times by Theo and Taylor, whilst David watched from a distance. Joshua collapsed inside the shop, whilst the shopkeeper and customers called police and tried to help Joshua. As for the 3 gang members, the job wasn't done yet, because they hopped back in the SUV and started searching for more people. The gang would come across a man called Ricardo Butler. He was walking down the street with his partner and young child, which is when they again hopped out of the SUV and stabbed him multiple times as he tried to run away. Several emergency service calls were now being made in the Hackney area about a group of masked men going around stabbing people. Ambulance will attend both scenes of where the men were stabbed, but as police were patrolling the area, they would spot the stolen white SUV that was driving recklessly, trying to get away from the scene of the crime. The police will give chase, and it won't be long until the SUV crashes into another car and all the members run out carrying weapons, whilst armed police officers chase after them. On the other side of the field, Joshua was rushed to the hospital, but his injuries were too severe, and he later died in the hospital at just the age of 29. Ricardo Butler, who was stabbed multiple times by the gang while he was with his partner and child who was in a buggy, would end up surviving the attack after being rushed to the hospital. This is the crazy thing about being stabbed. Some people can die by just one stab wound, whilst others manage to survive even after taking multiple. The group would manage to outrun the police at the time and start changing their clothes in an effort to avoid being detected. But whilst the other 2 got away, Theo was too slow leaving the area and was arrested nearby and taken straight to the police station. The others would regroup at a flat belonging to a man called Harley McGivern. Harley would allow his flat to be used as a base for the gang and would allow them to dispose of their clothing and the machetes that they used to stab the 2 civilians. The gang had one of their members nicked and would now start stressing, knowing the police were after them. An investigation was launched and the police had pretty much everything they needed in order to identify the other 2 suspects. The CCTV footage of the gang stabbing Joshua White in broad daylight was clear, and the forensic evidence inside the crashed SUV gave the police the names of the other 2 attackers. Surveillance footage tracked the attackers' movements that led the police straight to their hiding spot, and that's when Taylor and David were arrested and taken straight to the police station. Harley McGivern, who was hiding the 2 attackers, was also arrested in his flat. The gang completed their mission of stabbing a random person just so they can get their oldest respect and not get kicked out of the gang. But now they must answer for their actions as they stand in court and the people hear about the dumb reason for their broad daylight stabbings. The jury heard how Joshua was chased and stabbed randomly after the defendants received a text message from a senior gang member ordering them to get some notches on your blade or they'll be de-recruited. The defendants had also pursued Ricardo straight after, even though he was with a 9-month-old baby in a pram. Ricardo, who managed to survive the attack, gave a statement saying how, "I knew I had been stabbed. My partner was panicking, but I knew by panicking I could bleed out faster. My partner called an ambulance and I was wondering how many times I had been stabbed." Ricardo was told in the hospital that if one of the stab wounds had just been a few inches closer to his spine, he would have been paralyzed for the rest of his life. This is just a scary thing to hear, because bear in mind this was a completely innocent man who was just going about his day with his family. Theo Mamadou, 18 years old, was found guilty of murder. He used a 2-foot zombie knife and stabbed Joshua 3 times in the back. Theo was given a life sentence for a minimum term of 18 years along with 9 years concurrent for GBH. Taylor Isaac and David Kerrigan, both 20 years old, were given life sentence with a minimum term of 25 years along with 12 years concurrent for GBH. It was found that Taylor had delivered a fatal chest wound that killed Joshua. Harley McGivern was found guilty of perverting the course of justice, but I can't find the exact length of his sentence. Joshua's father made a statement saying, "I hope that today's verdict will have lasting consequences for those who commit such a heartless and shameful killing, and stands as a lesson to others who are considering carrying knives, which could result and the loss of other innocent lives. I've covered a lot of cases of gang members killing rivals in the most horrific ways, but this has to be one of the most brain-dead reasons I've ever seen for a bunch of young men taking a life. They were literally looking to kill anyone just to impress another man who's already rotting in jail and to stay part of a gang that provides no benefit to their life. The three of them are now sitting in prison and they're throwing their whole life away over the dumbest thing. But what makes this worthwhile is the multiple comments you can find online mocking these absolute clowns. The fact that these clowns thought it'd be better to stab innocent people than to be de-recruited from their gang just shows the problem with young people being groomed by these older members. Please go put your energy into something that will actually benefit you in life and avoid the street life at any cost. Stay safe and I'll see you lot in the next one. God bless.
A life for a life. The county line operation that ended with bloodshed and the third side gang member, Zino, getting stabbed multiple times as he's left with his insides falling out.
It's a drugs line. It tends to involve young people, often exploited, taking often large quantities of drugs from urban areas such as London out into county towns and to coastal towns.
Someone like my little brother's age, because that's the age I really started, 12, 13, 11, that sort of growing up, hitting puberty, like even the general public, they would never look at a young person and think, he sells drugs.
This story takes place in Norwich, about 100 miles away from London, a city in the eastern region of England and considered a quiet city for the most part. But with cities like Norwich, you tend to get more drug county line operations rather than gang violence. Before I get onto the story of Joe Dix, aka Zino, I'm just going to give you guys a quick breakdown on what exactly county line operations are and how they work. I cover a lot of gangs and drill rappers in my videos, and a lot of these people will be involved in a county line operation at some point, because this is usually one of the methods that these gangs use to make money. An example of someone I've covered who got caught for this is LD from the 6-7 gang. County lines is basically a drug trafficking method where gangs, often based in cities like London, Birmingham or Manchester, expand their drug operations into smaller towns, aka the countryside. They use a single mobile phone line called a county line to take orders. These gangs often exploit vulnerable children and teenagers as young as 12 to transport drugs from the city to the county line and bring back cash. The teenagers, often labelled as runners, are sent to these cities by train, coach or taxi, or sometimes are made to stay in trap houses overnight. If this is sounding familiar, it's probably because you've seen some aspects of it in the popular Netflix series Top Boy. Just like the Netflix series, the gang will promise these teenagers money, status and protection, or even sometimes use debt traps to intimidate their runners into doing what they want. With county lines, they can also turn deadly, as you will find out in this video, because once a gang oversteps their boundaries, it can lead to stabbings, kidnappings and even murder. And someone who was involved in a county line operation himself is the main person of this video, Joe Dix. Joe Dix was born in Brighton in December 2003, but moved over to Norwich in 2004. He was just like any other kid growing up and took a massive interest in sports and was a popular kid in school. However, as a young teenager, he was exploited by a couple guys in his area into becoming a runner for their county line operation. This will become the turning point in Joe's life, as his behaviour and school attendance start to decline. He will start to lash out on people he cared about and would often go missing from home, likely selling drugs in the countryside. Joe, now being involved in county line operations, will start going by the name Zino from the Third Side Gang. The Third Side Gang is an established county line crew in Norfolk. Joe had a reputation for himself, but in 2021, he'll get arrested and be convicted for supplying Class A drugs. You see, the problem Joe had was not that he got arrested, but it was the fact that the money and drugs he was carrying were confiscated by the police, which now left him in debt to the gang. Joe was allegedly kidnapped and beaten for this situation, leaving him seriously injured. Unfortunately, Joe was unable to escape this life, as he would go on to get arrested several more times. He would receive a YRO, Youth Rehabilitation Order, which gave him a home curfew. He also had a GPS tag fitted, which stopped him from entering certain areas of Norwich. With the new restrictions and rules in place, Joe was now starting to move in a better path, but it will only take one phone call for all this to fall apart. Cameron Palmer, Benjamin Gill and Hans B. Harry, part of the rival gang OTM, will hatch up a plan to rob the stash house of the Third Side gang. The OTM members got wind of where their rivals were keeping the products and managed to get a key to the house on the block of flats. On the 28th of January 2022, the three members will now put their plan into motion and make their way to the flat in Vale Green, where the Three Side gang were keeping their products. The group were able to get access into the flat, but when they tried the key to open the house door, it didn't work. They would try the key several times, even barging the door to get it open, but to no avail. But what the group didn't know was that on the other side of the door was a County Lines drug dealer who was hearing the whole thing happen. The drug dealer will call Joe at 6:48 PM and tell him that people were trying to rob the house and to hurry up and help him. Joe, hearing the whole information, will waste no time and start making his way to the Vale Green area with a fat machete. Whilst Joe was making his way to the stash house, the OTM members were on their way out of the flat building after failing to get through the door and rob the house. Joe Dix and the group will eventually spot each other, and this will now be the final couple minutes of Joe's life. The three teenagers will chase Joe for a couple minutes, and in CCTV footage, you can see Joe running for his life. In the footage, you can also see one of the members, Benjamin Gill, drop something, and when he bent over to pick it up, you can see him holding a knife in his other hand. The teenagers would eventually catch up to Joe and go on to stab him 7 times before running off. Joe was actually able to stand up after the attack and start stumbling in the direction of his flat. He won't make it far before collapsing, with his insides falling out, according to witnesses. Emergency services will be called and will find Joe laying on the ground with multiple stab wounds. He was rushed to a hospital but was already too late, and Joe passed away 1 hour later at just the age of 18. It was stated that the cause of death was hypovolemic shock and a critical stab wound to the torso. An investigation will now be launched into the death of Joe Dix, aka Zino from Third Side. Police will gather CCTV footage around the area Joe was last spotted, which is when they spot the OTM gang members making their way to the Vale Green estate and chasing Joe down the road before stabbing him. The police now had 3 faces and 3 potential suspects related to the murder. Further CCTV footage will show the teenagers making their way back to Benjamin's flat in Lefroy Road after the stabbing. They will then leave the flat 30 minutes later and make their way to a nearby shop, laughing and smiling like nothing happened. When information came out of Joe's death, the 3 teenagers would try to cover their tracks by burning all their clothes and the blade used to murder Joe. They would even throw all their phones into a river in order to get rid of any evidence. Forensic analysts would report back that all 3 phones dropped off the network at the same time. Cameron's phone was eventually recovered by the search and dive team, but the phone was broken and waterlogged, so it had to be dried out and reconstructed into a different phone before being able to access the device. The 3 teenagers will now be arrested. Text messages will be found on Cameron's phone showing that he organised the robbery. The task that the prosecution now had was to prove that the 3 OTM gang members were responsible for the death of Joe Dix. Court hearings will be spread out throughout the year, but on the 4th of October 2023, after 12 hours of deliberation, the jury will reach a majority verdict and all 3 teenagers will be ordered to stand up. Hans B. Harry's solicitor will argue that there was no evidence that our client participated in the stabbing of Joe, as you can't see him anywhere in the CCTV footage of the attack. 20-year-old Hans B. Harry was however found guilty and received a life sentence with a minimum term of 20 years, and upon release he will be deported back to Mauritius. The solicitor for Benjamin Gill will try to flip the script and argue that the drug dealer who called Joe might have been involved in the murder and not his client. 19-year-old Benjamin Gill was found guilty and received a life sentence with a minimum term of 21 years. The solicitor for Cameron Palmer addressed the jury and argued that even though his client was a drug dealer, it doesn't mean he's a murderer, and that Cameron was not spotted with a knife in the CCTV footage. 19-year-old Cameron Palmer was however found guilty and received a life sentence with a minimum term of 21 years. Because Joe, aka Zino, was part of a gang, the rival gang would go on to mock his death along with sending threatening messages to his parents. They would vandalise Joe's memorial garden at Vale Green that the family set up. The First Side gang would now start plotting a revenge attack on the OTM gang for the murder of their member. A close friend of Joe called Alfie Hammett, part of the First Side gang, would be in contact with another gang called IP3 in order to get revenge for Joe's murder. A 19-year-old called Joshua Howe, part of a neighbouring gang, will also be involved, and they'll set their mark on an OTM gang member called Raymond Quigley. On the 17th of January 2023, Alfie and Joshua will travel to Ipswich Town Centre, patrolling the area looking for Raymond. You can watch CCTV footage of the pair going up and down the town centre with a bally on and a hood up and both hands in their pocket, concealing a weapon. Around 3:35 PM, the two teenagers will spot Raymond walking with two of his friends. Alfie will run straight at Raymond and start stabbing him multiple times, whilst Joshua pulls out a long blade and chases after one of the friends Raymond was with. The friend managed to escape to safety in a nearby clothes shop, and this is when Joshua runs out the shop and proceeds to sprint down the road. Alfie, who stabbed Raymond multiple times, will also run away in the opposite direction to Joshua. Following the attack, Raymond managed to stagger across the road to get help, but collapsed in a nearby shop. Emergency services would arrive shortly afterwards, but despite their best efforts of the public and medical team, Raymond died at the scene at just the age of 18. The First Side gang had now completed their mission, a life for a life. Another investigation will now be launched into the death of Raymond Quigley. There was a huge amount of CCTV footage of the whole attack, and CCTV footage of both attackers after the incident. You can see Alfie running down the street to a car park in which he switched out his grey tracksuit bottoms for black ones. The footage will also catch Alfie without his mask heading back home. Joshua's movements were also tracked after the incident, as you can see him walk down the road and start sprinting from time to time. Around midnight on the 21st of January, officers arrested Joshua in Oxfordshire, and 12 hours after, Alfie was also arrested on Rushmore Street. They were taken into police custody for questioning before being charged with murder 2 days later. Mobile phone analysis discovered that a series of phone calls were made before the attack, one associated with Third Side and the other with IP3. Within minutes of receiving these calls, both Alfie and Joshua left their house and made their way towards the meeting place near the college before launching their attack on Raymond and his friend. Whilst the trial was going on, it was found that Joshua had attempted to flee the country to Kenya in order to avoid arrest. The prosecution will piece together that the attack was in relation to the murder of Joe Dix, and that one of the gangs were getting revenge for one of their members, essentially an eye for an eye. 19-year-old Alfie Hammer was found guilty and received a life sentence with a minimum term of 24 years. Joshua Howe was also found guilty and received a life sentence with a minimum term of 20 years. Both these gang members were only 19 when they got sentenced, which is honestly just crazy. The county line gang beef has now ended with two teenagers, Joe Dix and Raymond Quigley, losing their life at such a young age. The other teenagers involved in their deaths will now spend their whole youth in prison over something that was completely avoidable. As you can tell, county lines are just as bad as gang violence and are very dangerous. It's very hard to leave once you become involved in this sort of stuff, because these groups will groom young impressionable kids into doing their dirty work. Growing up in London, I've seen this happen firsthand, and it's more common than you think. Joe Dix's parents have started a charity called the Joe Dix Foundation, where they educate both parents and children on the dangers of being involved in these county line operations. I do recommend you go check it out once you get the time. Like I say in every outro, if you take anything from this video, let it be that the gang life is truly not something you want to be involved in. You got family and friends that fully care for you, so stay smart and let me know in the comments if I missed anything. I'll see you lot in the next one. God bless.